"We're going in a different direction, Ethan," Marcus Thorne said, that infuriating half-smirk plastered on his face. I'd grown to despise that look in the short month he'd been my superior at Innovate Corp here in Austin. "Thanks for everything, but we need people who fit the new model." My name's Ethan Cole, 38 years old, and for the past 7 years, I was the senior account executive. At least, I had been until about 45 seconds ago. I simply nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't plead my case by reminding him that I'd just closed our most successful quarter in the company's entire history, or point out that my accounts were responsible for 60% of our total revenue. I certainly didn't ask what this nebulous new model even meant. "Got it. Best of luck," I said, pushing my chair back and standing up. Marcus looked almost disappointed, as if he'd been gearing up for, perhaps even hoping for, an emotional outburst, something to conveniently slot into whatever pre-scripted narrative he'd concocted to justify my dismissal after I was gone. Instead, I walked out calmly, leaving my collection of top performer plaques gleaming dully in the cabinet behind me. 7 years of achievements, now just gathering dust. He could keep them. Stick with life stories to find out how this seemingly abrupt end was anything but. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens when experience and real connections are underestimated. Back at my desk, the air in the usually bustling sales bullpen felt thick with unspoken words. I packed quickly a few personal photos, my favorite coffee mug, the baseball Kevin had signed for me after I helped his fledgling tech startup secure its first crucial round of funding. While I cleared out my space, my coworkers stared intently at their screens, fingers flying across keyboards with a feigned intensity. Nobody made eye contact. The ritualistic march to human resources followed. I got the standard exit spiel. Gentle reminders about the non-compete clause I'd signed years ago. A checklist for returning company property. A link to an exit survey I had no intention of completing. The HR representative across the desk looked genuinely uncomfortable. She knew the numbers I consistently brought in. She knew what I was worth to Innovate Corp. I handed in my badge, laptop, and company phone. "Good luck with everything, Ethan," she said, and I could hear the sincere regret in her voice. "Appreciate it," I replied. As the elevator descended, carrying me away from 7 years of my professional life, I wasn't angry. Not exactly. Something colder, more resolute, had settled in. A quiet certainty that Marcus Thorne, with his buzzwords and quotes cribbed from the latest Harvard Business Review, had just made the biggest mistake of his professional life. He'd been with Innovate Corp for less than a month, obsessed with reshaping the sales culture into something he called more aggressive, whatever that was supposed to mean in practice. What Marcus didn't know, what human resources in their procedural wisdom never thought to check or perhaps quantify, was that every single one of my top-tier clients had deep personal connections to me. These weren't just names on a Salesforce dashboard. They were college roommates who dared to launch their own startups, groomsmen from my wedding who now ran procurement departments in major corporations, old friends who'd been with me, cheering me on, since before Innovate Corp even existed as a name on a business plan. In Marcus Thorne's meticulously organized spreadsheets, they were just account numbers and revenue figures. To me, they were relationships cultivated over decades, built on mutual respect and unwavering trust. I walked out to my car in the sprawling Austin parking lot, my jacket slung casually over my shoulder. My phone, my personal phone, buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Steve, whose supply chain solutions company, Sin Logistics, was my biggest account. "You free for lunch tomorrow, Ethan?" I smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time that day. "Absolutely, Steve. My treat." I'd been with Innovate Corp since they were just a scrappy startup, operating out of a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Austin. Back then, we were 15 people, fueled by instant coffee, ambitious dreams, and perpetually empty bank accounts. I was employee number 8. My job description was refreshingly simple. Bring in clients, keep them profoundly happy, and grow the relationships. And that's precisely what I did. Not by handing out an endless stream of branded pens, or by schmoozing on the golf course, but by actually giving a damn. By remembering birthdays and asking about their kids' college applications. By calling just to check in, not to constantly upsell them on the latest feature. By being a reliable resource, a trusted advisor, not just another vendor clamoring for their budget. When my old college roommate Steve launched Sin Logistics, I was his first call for the foundational software they needed. When Kevin's health tech startup desperately needed a robust security integration, I was the one who brought him on board with Innovate. When Gary decided to expand his manufacturing business into 2 new states, I made sure our solutions scaled seamlessly with his growth. A staggering 62% of my entire book of business came from people I'd known long before they were official clients. The rest? They came from their enthusiastic referrals. The first undeniable sign of trouble had appeared 3 months ago during the quarterly review. Our CEO, Olivia Hayes, introduced Marcus Thorne, freshly imported from some high-flying Silicon Valley firm I'd never even heard of. His hair was too perfect, his smile a little too wide and insincere. Everything about him screamed ambition without the grounding of actual substance. Marcus is going to revolutionize our approach to sales, Olivia had announced with a flourish. Make us more competitive in the modern marketplace. I'd heard that kind of empty corporate talk before, usually from people who'd never actually closed a significant deal themselves. 2 weeks later, Marcus called an all-hands sales team meeting. He presented a groundbreaking new client acquisition strategy that involved rigid cold outreach quotas and script-based pitches, making a grand show about measurable metrics and performance analytics. Not once during his entire hour-long presentation did he mention the word relationships. After the meeting, Gary, my long-standing industrial client, texted me, "Your new boss seems like a real piece of work, Ethan. Watch your back." Another warning flare went up during a client dinner. Marcus had insisted on joining me and Steve from Sin Logistics. He spent the entire evening talking over Steve, constantly interrupting with corporate jargon and buzz phrases that made Steve visibly uncomfortable. In the parking lot afterward, Steve pulled me aside. "That guy, Marcus? He is going to be a problem for you, isn't he?" I tried to shrug it off, saying he was just finding his footing. But a nod in my gut told me Steve was right. The way Marcus would stare at my client list during our one-on-ones, the way he'd question my process, though never notably my consistently stellar results. When he started scheduling individual meetings with the junior sales reps, pointedly excluding me from the discussions about their accounts, many of which I had helped them cultivate, I should have seen the writing on the wall in big, bold letters. The signs were all there. I just hadn't wanted to believe someone could be foolish enough, arrogant enough, to try and burn down something that had taken years of careful work to build. I didn't call anyone after Marcus Thorne, so unceremoniously showed me the door. I didn't have to. By 7 p.m. that evening, as I was trying to decide if a frozen pizza constituted a reasonable dinner for a newly unemployed executive, my personal phone wouldn't stop buzzing. It was a cascade of concern, confusion, and simmering indignation from the very people Marcus Thorne had dismissed as mere entries on a balance sheet. First up was Steve from Sin Logistics. "Ethan? Just got a rather perfunctory email introducing my new account manager. What in the world is going on over there?" His voice, usually calm and measured, was tight with disbelief. Before I could even formulate a proper response, another call came in. It was Kevin, the founder of the health tech startup, whose signed baseball sat on my now former desk. "Ethan, my man, some kid just called me. Said he's taking over my account from you. Are you okay? Did they move you to a new division or something?" Then it was Gary, my industrial client. "Ethan, your replacement just called. Sounded about 12. Are you changing roles? They didn't say anything about you leaving." One by one, my phone lit up with similar messages and calls. 18 clients in total, every single major account I personally managed, all reaching out within a few short hours. They weren't calling because Innovate Corp's crack new communication strategy had informed them of the change. They were calling because they hadn't heard from me first, and that was all the alarm bell they needed. I found myself on my back deck, a tumbler of bourbon in hand, watching the vibrant Austin skyline transition from the fiery hues of sunset to the cooler tones of dusk. The anger I had braced myself for, the indignation I thought would surely consume me, never really showed up. Instead, a cold, almost serene clarity washed over me. Marcus Thorne, in his infinite wisdom and with his new model, had made a fundamental, almost comically elemental mistake. He'd looked at spreadsheets instead of people. He'd seen revenue streams instead of relationships. He'd calculated my worth based on what he thought I did, managing accounts, without ever bothering to understand what I'd actually built. A network of trust and mutual respect that transcended mere business transactions. My phone rang again, jolting me from my reverie. This time it was Megan from Apex Logistics, a significant client I'd landed 3 years ago after months of patient groundwork. "Ethan Cole, what in the absolute hell is happening over at Innovate?" Her voice was sharp, direct, and clearly furious. "I just got the strangest, most unprofessional call from some guy stuttering his way through an introduction, saying he's my new contact. He couldn't even pronounce the name of my company correctly." "They let me go this morning, Megan," I said simply. No embellishment needed. A stunned silence crackled on the line. "Are you serious?" she finally exclaimed. "After the quarter you just delivered for them? After all the hoops you jumped through to get our last integration project back on track?" "New VP, new vision, Megan," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Well, his vision better include finding himself a new logistics partner, because I am absolutely not working with whoever this new person is," she fumed. "Did they even look at how much business you bring in? Did they consult anyone who actually knows how this company operates?" "Apparently not enough, or not the right kind of enough for the new model," I said, a wry note creeping into my voice. "I'm calling Olivia Hayes right now," Megan declared. Olivia was Innovate Corp's CEO. "This is beyond ridiculous. It's insulting." "I appreciate that, Megan, more than you know," I said sincerely. "But please, don't put yourself in an awkward position on my account." "Ethan, listen to me," she cut in, her voice softening slightly, but losing none of its steel. "You've bailed us out of technical emergencies at midnight on a Sunday. You came to my dad's funeral last year, not as an account manager, but as a friend. This isn't just business for me, Ethan. It's personal, and they just made it very, very personal." After I hung up with Megan, I took 5 more calls, each a variation on the same theme: disbelief, frustration, and unwavering loyalty. By 10 p.m., I turned my phone off. I needed to think, to process the whirlwind of the last few hours. I wasn't going to actively sabotage Innovate Corp. That wasn't my style, and frankly, it wasn't necessary. They were doing a fine job of that themselves, but I also wasn't going to lift a finger to protect them from the inevitable consequences of their own monumentally bad decisions. Marcus Thorne had wanted a new model. He was about to get a real-world lesson in the one that actually worked. The next morning, amidst the chaos of my suddenly empty schedule, an unexpected email landed in my personal inbox. It was from Sophia Walker, the Vice President of Sales at Peak Solutions, Innovate Corp's main competitor in the Austin tech scene. We'd met at various industry conferences over the years, always maintaining a cordial professional relationship. Her message was brief and to the point. "Ethan, heard what happened at Innovate. Unbelievable. Let's grab coffee this week. My treat. Sophia." I didn't have to wonder how she'd heard. News, especially bad or surprising news, travels at lightning speed in our relatively close-knit industry. As I showered and dressed that morning, something profound shifted inside me. The loyalty I'd steadfastly felt towards Innovate Corp, the company I'd poured 7 years of my life into helping build from a fledgling startup into a recognized player, evaporated completely. They hadn't just fired an employee. They had, with a stunning lack of foresight, severed relationships they didn't even seem to comprehend existed, let alone value. I texted Sophia back. "Coffee sounds good. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock?" Her response was almost immediate. "Perfect. The brew and bite on Lamar? I have some ideas I think you'll like." For the first time since walking out of Marcus Thorne's office, I genuinely smiled. Not a smile of spite, or even relief, but a smile born of a dawning realization. I finally, unequivocally, understood my true value. And thanks to Marcus's blunder, so would Innovate Corp. Soon enough, the coffee shop Sophia suggested, the Brew and Bite, was strategically located clear across town from the Innovate Corp offices. A smart move. Austin's business community, while booming, was still small enough for accidental and potentially awkward run-ins. Sophia looked exactly as I remembered her from the conference circuit. Sharp, confident, with an easy intelligence that didn't require a power suit to broadcast. She was dressed in practical business casual, a warm, genuine smile on her face as I approached her table. "They're idiots, Ethan," she said bluntly, after we'd exchanged greetings and ordered our coffees. "No preamble, no beating around the bush. Everyone in the industry is talking about it. Everyone. When the top performer at a major competitor, someone who consistently pulls in over half their revenue, suddenly becomes available, well, people notice. It's the lead story on the internal rumor mill." She sipped her latte. "Especially," she continued, her eyes meeting mine, "when that person is known for building the kind of unshakable client loyalty most companies can only dream of." I shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "Ancient history now, Sophia." "Not according to my phone," she countered with a knowing look. "It's been blowing up since yesterday afternoon with some of our clients, who also happen to know you, asking if Peak Solutions has hired you yet. They're practically offering to make introductions for you to us." That caught me completely off guard. "Your clients are asking about me?" "Ethan, you've built relationships that span this entire industry, not just within Innovate's client base. People trust you, they value your integrity and your approach. That's a rare and incredibly valuable commodity." She slid a sleek, understated folder across the table. "So, with that in mind, here's what Peak Solutions is prepared to offer." I opened the folder. The proposal was impressive. Director of Enterprise Relationships, a team of 6 reporting directly to me. A base salary a solid 30% higher than what I was making at Innovate, plus an aggressive, clearly defined commission structure. "And full autonomy," Sophia added, as if sensing my unasked question. "Build your division how you see fit. No micromanagement, no convoluted new models handed down from on high. Just results, and the support you need to achieve them." "It sounds very good, Sophia," I said carefully, genuinely impressed. "But I need to be upfront about something. The non-compete clause in my Innovate contract." Sophia waved her hand dismissively. "Already ran it by our legal team this morning. It's practically unenforceable. Texas courts rarely uphold them, especially in cases of termination without cause, which this clearly is. They're mostly scare tactics. Still," I said, "I don't want to start my tenure here embroiled in a legal battle." "Agreed," she replied quickly, "which is why we're suggesting a 60-day consulting arrangement first, to ensure a clean break and allow any dust to settle. After that, full employment, all benefits, the works. It gives us both a layer of protection." It was a well-thought-out, intelligent plan. "One more thing," I said, meeting her direct gaze. My former clients, I mean. We're not asking you to violate any confidentiality agreements, Ethan, or to actively poach anyone," Sophia interjected smoothly. "But if your former clients, of their own volition, happen to seek out new vendors due to, let's call it dissatisfaction, with their current arrangements," I nodded slowly, "that would be their independent business decision." "Exactly," she confirmed, a small smile playing on her lips. I told Sophia I needed a day to think it over, a formality more than anything. The decision, in truth, was already made. I signed the consulting agreement the following morning. By then, the fallout at Innovate Corp had already begun to escalate. Steve's company, Sin Logistics, my biggest account, worth nearly $5 million annually to Innovate, had officially paused all ongoing implementation projects, citing a relationship restructuring evaluation. Corporate speak for "we're incredibly unhappy, and we're not moving forward until we talk to Ethan." Kevin's health tech firm had formally requested full documentation of all their processes and a complete data export, explicitly stating it was in preparation for a potential vendor transition. 3 more of my key clients had flatly declined meetings with their newly assigned Innovate account managers, stating they would only discuss their accounts with me. I hadn't orchestrated any of it. I hadn't needed to. These were my friends, my long-term partners, responding naturally and predictably to a fundamental breach of trust. That afternoon, my personal phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer it. Ethan Cole. A slight pause. Then, Ethan, it's Olivia Hayes, the CEO of Innovate Corp. My stomach tightened, just a fraction. Olivia, what can I do for you? I kept my voice neutral, professional. I'm calling to understand what's happening with our client base, Ethan. Of course. Now she wanted to talk. Now she was concerned. I'm not sure what you mean, Olivia, I said, my voice betraying none of the irony I felt. I've been gone from Innovate for less than a week. Several key accounts are suddenly threatening to leave, Ethan. Steve from Sin Logistics says he'll only talk to you. He's refusing all contact with Marcus and the new team. The relationships I built over 7 years were personal, Olivia. You know that. I always made that clear. Logan, be reasonable, she said, her voice taking on a slightly sharper edge. Those are Innovate Company accounts. And I haven't contacted a single one of those clients since my termination, Olivia, I countered calmly. If they're reaching out to me now, that's entirely their choice, based on their assessment of the situation. We need you to help with the transition, Ethan. Make introductions, smooth things over with Steve and the others. I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. You mean you need me to clean up Marcus Thorne's mess? A loaded silence hung on the line. Then her voice softer, more conciliatory. The board has concerns about his decision, Ethan. We could discuss your returning. Same position, of course. Perhaps a 10% increase in your base salary as a gesture of goodwill. Too little, far too late, and utterly missing the point. I appreciate the offer, Olivia, truly, I said, and a part of me almost meant it. But I've already accepted a position elsewhere. Another pause, longer this time. I see, she finally said, her voice flat. Well, I hope you'll at least consider not actively poaching our clients as you settle into your new role. Olivia, I replied, a touch of weariness now in my voice. I don't need to poach what's already choosing to leave on its own. After I hung up, I felt no flush of satisfaction, no sense of victory, just a quiet confirmation of what I'd known all along. Innovate Corp, under its new visionary leadership, had only ever valued the revenue, never truly understanding or appreciating the intricate web of relationships that created it. Now, they were beginning to learn the difference, the hard, expensive way. 2 weeks into my consulting arrangement with Peak Solutions, I met Steve from Sin Logistics for lunch at our usual downtown spot. The restaurant wasn't fancy, just a reliable place with good burgers and private booths where we could talk freely without being overheard. The transition to Peak was going smoothly on my end. Sophia Walker was true to her word, giving me the autonomy and resources I needed. But the situation at Innovate Corp, from what Steve described, was deteriorating rapidly. Marcus Thorne has been calling me daily, Ethan, Steve said, shaking his head in disbelief as he salted his fries. Yesterday, he actually offered a 15% discount on our current contract if we'd just resumed the implementation schedule. No questions asked about why we paused, just a blatant attempt to buy our compliance. I wasn't surprised. It was a classic move from someone out of their depth, flailing with the only tool they understood, price. And when I told him it wasn't about the money, that it was about the breakdown in trust and the disrespectful way you were treated, Steve continued, his jaw tightening. You know what he did? He started bad-mouthing you, said you'd been on your way out anyway, that there were performance issues he was too polite to discuss publicly. My own jaw tightened. Classy. That's when I told him we were actively exploring other software options and hung up, Steve concluded, taking a large sip of his iced tea. The nerve of that guy. This disturbing pattern repeated itself in conversations I had, carefully and unofficially, with other former clients. Marcus Thorne was scrambling, making increasingly desperate discount offers while simultaneously attempting to undermine my reputation. It was classic clumsy damage control from someone who clearly knew he'd made a catastrophic mistake and was now trying to deflect blame. But then, something else began to happen, something far more insidious and concerning than just ineptitude and slander. Kevin, whose tech startup relied heavily on the systems Innovate provided, called me later that evening, his voice strained with frustration. "Ethan, you are not going to believe this. As a precaution, given all the uncertainty, I requested a full data export of our account. History, configurations, everything. And they're completely stonewalling me. They're claiming our contract doesn't explicitly guarantee data portability in the format I need, which is nonsense." "That's not right, Kevin," I said immediately. "I remember negotiating that clause myself. Section 12B of your standard agreement specifically covers data ownership and transfer rights. It guarantees your access and portability." "I know! I have the contract right here in front of me," Kevin exclaimed. "But their legal team is suddenly reinterpreting the language. They're making it sound like I'm asking for the moon instead of what I'm contractually entitled to." The next day, Gary, my manufacturing client, reported similar issues. Then Megan from Apex Logistics. One by one, my former clients were discovering that Innovate Corp, under Marcus Thorne's panicked leadership, was actively making it difficult, if not impossible, for them to leave. Even if they were fully prepared to pay any applicable early termination fees. They were being met with technical roadblocks, sudden system maintenance windows that only seemed to affect clients who had indicated a desire to transition, and convoluted contractual reinterpretations designed to stall and frustrate. I called Sophia Walker at Peak Solutions immediately. "They're deliberately creating exit barriers, Sophia," I explained, outlining the pattern of behavior. "It's not just incompetence anymore. This is calculated. Technical roadblocks, nonsensical contract reinterpretations, strategic delays. They're essentially trying to hold client data hostage to prevent churn." Sophia wasn't surprised, but her voice hardened. "Marcus Thorne is fighting for his career now, Ethan. The Innovate board must be breathing down his neck about those disastrous revenue forecasts. This goes beyond normal, albeit aggressive, retention tactics. If they're systematically denying access to data or creating undue obstacles, they're treading on very dangerous ground legally." "It feels like they are," I agreed. "They're banking on smaller companies not having the resources or the will to fight a protracted legal battle." "Get me documentation, Ethan," Sophia said, her voice crisp and decisive. "Every instance, every client affected. Screenshots, email chains, recorded call logs if possible, legally obtained, of course. Our legal team will have an absolute field day with this if it's as blatant as you describe." Over the next week, I carefully collected the evidence. It wasn't difficult. My former clients were more than willing to share their frustrating experiences. I amassed a folder containing screenshots of suddenly unavailable data export functions, copies of emails where Innovate representatives denied access to supposedly guaranteed services, and detailed notes from calls where clients felt they were being given the runaround or even subtly threatened with data loss if they terminated their contracts prematurely. But the real bombshell, the undeniable proof of systematic, deliberate obstruction, came from Gary. He forwarded me an email he'd received by mistake late one night. It was a classic reply-all blunder, clearly intended for Marcus Thorne and a select internal group at Innovate, not for a client. "Attached is the client retention strategy addendum you requested for the Barrett Legacy accounts," the email read, chillingly using my name. "We've identified several key technical dependencies and contractual ambiguities we can leverage to significantly delay transitions for these specific accounts. Legal believes we can stretch these maneuvers for 3 to 4 months minimum before facing any meaningful penalties or substantive legal challenges. This should provide ample time for alternative retention efforts." Attached to the email was a detailed spreadsheet, It listed every single one of my significant former clients. Next to each name was a column outlining specific retention tactics and delay maneuvers assigned to them. It wasn't just Marcus Thorne acting alone in a panic anymore. This was systematic, coordinated, and deliberately obstructive, seemingly sanctioned from higher up if legal was involved in strategizing it. I immediately forwarded everything: the misdirected email, the attached spreadsheet, and all the supporting documentation I'd collected, to Sophia and Peaksu Solutions' legal department. Their response was swift and forceful. This, they concluded, constituted clear, tortious interference with business relationships and raised serious questions about potential violations of data protection laws and fair business practices. That night, I sat on my deck again, the Austin skyline a glittering panorama before me. The city looked different now, tainted by this uglier side of business. 7 years I'd spent at Innovate, believing I was part of something worthwhile, something built on integrity. All that time, I'd thought I was building not just client relationships, but a company that valued ethical conduct. Now, I understood the stark truth. When faced with the direct consequences of their monumental hiring mistake and my departure, Innovate's leadership, or at least a significant faction within it, had chosen deliberate obstruction and unethical behavior over accountability and straightforward damage control. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about 18 businesses, many owned or run by people I considered friends, being deliberately harmed, their operations potentially crippled, all to cover someone else's colossal failure. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Legal team has what they need. Smoking gun acquired. Board has been briefed and approved the full offensive. You ready for this, Ethan? I texted back one single definitive word. Yes. The quiet clarity I'd felt before, the cold certainty, now crystallized into something stronger, sharper. Resolution. Unwavering determination. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. Peak Solutions lawyers moved with impressive speed and precision. Within 48 hours of receiving the smoking gun email and the compiled evidence of Innovate Corp's obstructive tactics, they had drafted comprehensive cease and desist letters. These weren't vague threats. They were meticulously detailed documents addressing Innovate's specific actions, citing potential contract violations, referencing data protection laws, and outlining the principles of unfair business practices they were allegedly breaching. Each letter was tailored to the experiences of the affected clients, demonstrating a clear, coordinated pattern of behavior. But, interestingly, they didn't send them immediately. That, Sophia Walker explained during our strategy meeting with her legal team, was to be my call, or rather, part of a broader strategy we would decide on together. We could fire these off tomorrow morning, Ethan, Sophia said, leaning forward, her expression intense. Go in hard, shut down their games right away, put them on the defensive legally. I appreciated the aggressive stance, the readiness to fight, but I shook my head. Not yet, Sophia. I think there's a more effective and ultimately more constructive approach. Let them feel the pressure from a different, unexpected quarter first. My plan was simple, but, I believed, more potent in the long run. It was about empowering my former clients to help themselves, collectively. First, with the careful guidance of Peak's legal team to ensure I didn't breach any of my own residual obligations to Innovate, I created a detailed but anonymized guide. It documented every known tactic Innovate Corp was currently using to obstruct client transitions, alongside specific, commonly found contractual clauses that protected client rights regarding data ownership, portability, and service continuity. Nothing in it mentioned Innovate by name or disclosed any proprietary information. It was simply an educational resource explaining standard industry contract language and best practices for navigating vendor transitions. Next, I subtly facilitated a series of informal industry networking lunches. I reached out to a few key former clients, Steve, Kevin, Megan, Gary, and suggested they might find it beneficial to connect with other business leaders in Austin who were navigating similar vendor challenges. I attended only the very first one, making a few key introductions before excusing myself. Sorry, folks, I'd said with a smile. Bit of a conflict of interest for me to linger, but I have a feeling you all might find you have some common business challenges worth discussing over a good meal. By the third such lunch, which they organized themselves, they had formed their own informal alliance. They began comparing notes, pooling their knowledge, sharing their specific experiences with Innovate, and discovering, with growing outrage, that they weren't isolated cases. They were all facing the same orchestrated obstruction. Meanwhile, I was head down, building something new and robust at Peak Solutions. I wasn't just bringing on individual team members. I was designing an entire client relationship division from the ground up, one focused on fostering long-term, transparent partnerships. Rather than quick transactional wins, Sophia gave me complete freedom, trusting my vision and experience. The results are already speaking for themselves, Ethan, she said one afternoon, after reviewing my 3-month progress report. The pipeline is strong, initial client feedback is stellar, and the team you're assembling is top-notch. The board is thrilled. 1 month into our counter strategy, the quiet dissemination of knowledge and the fostering of client collaboration, the pressure on Innovate Corp began to mount significantly. Clients, now armed with specific knowledge of their contractual rights and a clear understanding of Innovate's delay tactics, were collectively demanding adherence to their contract terms. When multiple major accounts simultaneously threatened coordinated legal action over the same documented issues, Innovate couldn't dismiss it as coincidence or isolated incidents anymore. Someone, clearly, was coordinating the response, and it wasn't a direct legal assault from Peak Solutions. Olivia Hayes, Innovate's CEO, called again. This time, her tone was entirely different. Gone was the defensiveness, the slight arrogance. It was replaced by a raw, undisguised desperation. "What do you want, Ethan?" she asked, her voice weary. "What will it take to make this stop?" "I'm not doing anything, Olivia," I replied, keeping my voice calm and neutral. "Your clients are simply exercising their contractual rights, as I understand it. We both know you're behind this, Ethan. This coordinated uprising. The board is now considering serious legal action against you for client interference and a host of other things." "You fired me without cause, Olivia," I reminded her gently. "Any communication I've had with my friends, and yes, they are my friends, since then has been personal, not professional. If they choose to share their business experiences with each other, that's their prerogative." "Friends," she repeated flatly, as if the word was foreign. "Yes, Olivia. Friends. That's the component you and Marcus Thorne never factored into your new model. These weren't just accounts on a ledger to me." The line went quiet for a long moment, then a sigh. "Marcus Thorne has been let go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm genuinely sorry to hear that, Olivia," I said, and I meant it. Losing a job unexpectedly, regardless of the circumstances, was something I understood all too well. We're prepared to make amends, Ethan. Full unhindered data portability for any client that wants it. No early termination fees. Clean, professionally managed transitions. Whatever it takes. It was exactly what my former clients deserved. "That sounds like a reasonable approach, Olivia." "And," she continued, a new note of hesitant hope in her voice, "we want to talk about bringing you back. Executive Vice President position, direct board access, name your terms." Now that was unexpected. I considered it for about 2 seconds, the irony not lost on me. I appreciate the offer, Olivia, more than the last one. But I've found where I belong now. I'm building something here at Peak. After we hung up, I contacted Steve, Megan, and the others, not to relay the details of my conversation with Olivia, but simply to give them a heads up. You might find Innovate Corp significantly more cooperative regarding your transition needs going forward, I suggested. Within days, Innovate Corp publicly announced an enhanced client transition program, offering exactly what Olivia had described to me. They framed it, of course, as a proactive customer service initiative. Everyone involved knew better. By then, my new department at Peak Solutions was rapidly taking shape. 3 of my most talented former team members from Innovate Corp, who had been miserable under Marcus Thorne's brief reign, had already joined me. More were in the interview process. Sophia stopped by my office late one evening as I was finalizing our department's official mission statement. "I heard Innovate Corp officially lost 8 major accounts this week alone," she said, leaning casually against the doorframe, a knowing smile on her face. I kept typing for a moment, then looked up. "The market's always changing, Sophia. Businesses make decisions that are best for them." "And is it just pure coincidence?" she pressed, her smile widening. "That 6 of those 8 accounts signed with Peak Solutions today?" I finally allowed myself a small smile. "Must be our own highly effective enhanced client transition program at Peak." She laughed, a genuine hearty laugh. "Well, whatever you're doing, Ethan, keep doing it. The board is already talking about a permanent seat for you at the executive table by year's end, consulting period or not." I nodded. The title, the promotions, they were validating, but they weren't the core driver for me anymore. What mattered was building something that couldn't be so easily broken by one person's poor decision or a flawed corporate philosophy. Something based on real connection, real value. 6 months after officially joining Peak Solutions full-time, I walked into our quarterly board meeting alongside Sophia and the rest of the executive team. The presentation I'd prepared was straightforward. Department growth metrics, impressive revenue projections directly attributable to the new clients, and, most importantly, near-perfect client retention rates for those who had transitioned to us. As I concluded, the board chair, a respected veteran of the Austin tech scene, leaned forward. "These numbers are exceptionally impressive, Ethan. 12 new enterprise-level clients in just 2 quarters, virtually all from a competitor. Retention rate near perfect. What's your secret?" "No real secret, sir," I replied. "We simply invest in relationships, not just transactions. We listen, we deliver, and we treat every client like they're our only client." The CFO spoke next, a data-driven man. "And the Innovate accounts. Our market intelligence suggests that 14 of their original 18 top clients you used to manage have now switched to us. 15, actually, as of yesterday," Sophia corrected, smoothly sliding a newly signed folder across the polished mahogany table. "Horizon Tech, a 9-year Innovate loyalist, signed with us this morning. It's a significant contract." A murmur of approval went around the table. "To be clear," I added, wanting to ensure complete transparency, "we've never directly solicited any of Innovate's clients while they were under contract. They've all approached Peak Solutions independently. Usually," Sophia chimed in, "after experiencing significant difficulties with their transition processes from Innovate, difficulties which, I might add, have been extensively and meticulously documented. Our legal team has everything on file should Innovate Corp ever entertain the notion of pursuing retaliatory action." They wouldn't. Not with what we had, not with their reputation already in tatters from the public fallout. The room fell silent as the board chair reviewed the latest figures from Horizon Tech. Finally, he looked up, his gaze settling on me, a slow nod of approval. "The board has reached a unanimous decision, Ethan. We'd like to formally offer you the position of Executive Vice President of Strategic Relationships for Peak Solutions, effective immediately." I accepted with a simple handshake. No gloating, no lengthy speeches. The work spoke for itself. That afternoon, the official press release about my promotion went out. My phone immediately buzzed with a message from Steve. "Just saw the news. Congratulations, EVP Cole. Well deserved." Moments later, my new assistant knocked on my office door. "Mr. Cole, you have a visitor. Olivia Hayes from Innovate Corp. She doesn't have an appointment." I considered sending her away. Then I decided against it. "Send her in." Olivia looked tired, visibly defeated. A stark contrast to the confident CEO I'd known. "Congratulations on the promotion, Ethan," she said, her voice subdued. "Thank you, Olivia. What can I do for you?" She placed a folder on my desk, identical in its sleekness to the one Sophia had given me months ago, yet worlds apart in its implication. Innovate Corp is exploring strategic acquisition options, Ethan. We'd like Peak Solutions to consider making an offer. The acquisition went through 3 months later. It wasn't driven by any lingering vendetta, but because, stripped of its recent mismanagement, Innovate still had a decent underlying technology stack that complemented Peak's offerings. It made good business sense. I insisted on one non-negotiable condition. Every remaining Innovate Corp employee would be given fair and respectful consideration for positions within the newly combined company. Nobody would experience the uncertainty and disrespect I had endured. On the day the deal officially closed, I drove to the old Innovate Corp office, the converted warehouse where I'd started my journey with them 7 years prior. The place looked smaller somehow, less vibrant than I remembered. The remaining employees, those who hadn't already jumped ship, gathered nervously in the main conference room for my address as a new EVP of their acquiring company. "I'm not here to clean house," I began, my gaze sweeping across the familiar, anxious faces. "I'm here because what we're building at Peak Solutions and what this combined entity will represent is based on the same fundamental principle that should have protected me and protected all of you here at Innovate. Relationships matter. They are the bedrock of sustainable success. They're worth investing in, worth protecting, worth fighting for." I saw a flicker of relief in their eyes, then a dawning understanding. "Your jobs are secure if you want them," I continued. "Your contributions, past and future, will be valued. All I ask is that you bring that same unwavering commitment to building and nurturing relationships with our clients, with your colleagues, with our partners, to everything you do going forward." Afterward, I walked through the emptying sales floor one last time. I stopped at my old desk, now cleared of its temporary occupant. My phone buzzed. A message from Gary. "Heard the final news about the acquisition. Poetic justice, my friend. Couldn't have happened to a better guy." I smiled, looking out over the familiar Austin skyline from the window near what used to be my workspace. The view was exactly as I remembered it, but I was different, stronger, clearer about what truly mattered. I texted Gary back. "Not about justice, my friend. It's about building something better for everyone." Then I walked out, not even bothering to glance at the empty space on the wall where my sales awards had once stood. I didn't need them anymore. The real value, the enduring value, had never been on that wall. It had been in the connections I'd forged, the relationships I'd built, the ones that had not only survived when everything else fell apart, but had ultimately paved the way for something far greater. Thank you for joining us on Life Stories 1 for Ethan's compelling story of integrity, resilience, and the enduring power of genuine relationships in the face of corporate misjudgment. We hope his journey inspires you. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more narratives of personal and professional triumph, please hit that like button, and most importantly, subscribe to Life Stories so you don't miss our next episode. Your support means the world to us.